On behalf of the NYU School of Continuing Professional Studies, I would like to welcome you to the 14th Media Talk, sponsored by the Center for Publishing. In our audience tonight, we have students for our Summer Publishing Institute for the summer of 2013, our Master of Science in Publishing Digital and Print Media. We have faculty and special guests. I'd like to thank you for attending this great event, and I always look forward to the dialogue that occurs on these nights. I'd also like to extend a warm welcome and thank David Carr and our panelists for joining us this evening. We are much appreciative of their commitment to NYU-SCPS. Tonight, we are also celebrating a milestone. It is the 35th anniversary of the Summer Publishing Institute. And as we think back 35 years ago to when we first started in 1978, we think about where we were in the industry. At the time, we had a small group of students, 40 to be exact. They were assembled in our Washington Square Student Center. And even though we don't have very detailed records, we do know, quite amazingly, that their magazine launch projects focused on movies. Today, we know that the world open to our students is much wider. We focus on digital media and various forms of media across the industry. When we think about the SPI and we think about 1978, the word digital certainly was not introduced into the mass market and not on our minds and not even a whisper. Apple had been invented only 2 years before, and Microsoft Windows would not make its debut until 1985. So in the digitally dark days of 1978, students were still typing on typewriters. They learned how to compose eloquent letters to their authors on a Selectric typewriter. Anyone remember those? I doubt very few in the audience do. And guess how those letters were sent? They were sent by snail mail, their only option. Marketing books and magazines meant sending authors on book tours and taking out newspaper ads. There were many more newspapers back then. And as for Twitter, nobody, and I mean nobody, would ever have believed that those voluble publishers could get their message down to 140 characters to market a book, but wonders do happen. Now let's cut to a more recent history and fast forward to 10 years ago. At that time, I've been told, there were only 6 Summer Publishing Institute sessions with some kind of digital component or point of discussion. And when you think that in 2003, our curriculum was really only, the digital discussion was really only a small focal point, it's quite amazing as you move forward to 2013. Today, and this summer in particular, there are 21 sessions plus 18 computer lab sessions teaching students valuable skills such as HTML and Adobe Creative Suite. 10 years ago, there were 44 speakers in the magazine session and 54 in the book session. This summer, we have 96 magazine speakers and 97 book speakers. 10 years ago, there were no industry visits. This summer, students will visit 6 magazine and digital media companies, 6 publishing houses, and 8 bookstores. Things have certainly changed for us. There have been thousands of students, like those of you in the audience tonight, who have come here to New York to study in the Summer Publishing Institute, sometimes with fear and trepidation, to begin a career in the book or magazine industries, and more recently, as we discussed, in digital media. 6 weeks later, our students graduate, and hopefully they land their first job in publishing, or some of them move on into our Master of Science program in publishing. In fact, in the summer of 2012, 70% of our students were working or interning in the industry after the Summer Publishing Institute, and we are very proud of that statistic. At NYU-SCPS, careers are what it's all about. With our 15 professional graduate degrees and many non-credit continuing education certificates, we are known as a school that turns out highly trained practitioners who have mastered key industry skills. And programs that you're all engaging in this audience are a reflection of that. So to both SPI and graduate students, I say to you that the skills you are learning at the Center for Publishing will help you master a very challenging industry. And now to tell you more about the center and to discuss our media talk, I'd like to introduce a great colleague, our director for the Center for Publishing, director for the MS in Publishing, and the executive director for the Summer Publishing Institute, Andrea Chambers.
Thank you, Dennis. Well, good evening, everybody, and thanks so much for coming to the latest in our NYU Media Talk series, The Editors Speak, and to our annual student and alumni party. I, too, am very pleased to welcome the members of the SBI class of 2013, our 35th anniversary class. In fact, class of 2013, stand up so we can give you a round of applause. Thank you. It's great to have you all here this evening. I'd also like to welcome our SBI alumni who've returned tonight to help us celebrate this major event and to get to know our current students and share their wisdom. I'm also very pleased to see so many of our Master of Science in Publishing students here this evening, our members of our faculty, our advisory board, and all of our friends and our colleagues in the publishing industry. A very special welcome to our moderator, to David Carr, and to our distinguished panelists. I will be telling you more about our panel and our panelists in just a few minutes, but first, as I always like to do at occasions like this, I'd like to say just a few words as to what's happening this summer at the Center for Publishing. So, as Dennis mentioned, it is a very important summer for us at SBI, which started last week and continues to mid-July. We, in addition to having a record number of students this year, we do have a record number of speakers, 193 to be exact, including in the magazine session, 17 editors-in-chief. So just to name a few, we have with us the editors-in-chief of People, Lucky, Esquire, Time Out New York, Martha Stewart Living, In Style, Men's Health, Marie Claire, the Ladies' Home Journal, the Paris Review, and that's just the beginning of the list. We have many leading publishers with us, including Michael Clinton of Hearst, Duckwood Moore of the National Geographic Society, Chris Mitchell of GQ, we have Christine Guilfoyle of Every Day with Rachel Ray, and many more. I'd like to pay a very special thank you to Victoria Von Beal, our wonderful magazine director, back for her second year, who's worked so hard to put together this magazine program. Victoria, you here? Yes? I know she's on her way, running late. Okay. Now, in the book session, which began the week after next, I'd like to thank our wonderful book director, Libby Jordan, back for her fourth year, who's put together a similarly stellar group of speakers for the book session. Now, this year, for example, the keynote will be delivered by Carolyn Reedy, who is, of course, the CEO of Simon & Schuster. And shortly after Carolyn speaks, we have Madeline McIntosh, the COO of Random House. Madeline will be moderating a panel, and on that panel will be, for example, Reagan Arthur, the new publisher of Little Brown. We have Reagan Arthur and Ellen Archer. Ellen is the CEO and publisher of Hyperion. We have Jamie Rabb judging our final projects. And in between, we have an amazing children's book panel, one of top editors, another of leading publishing bloggers, and so much more. And of course, in both sessions, we have a full schedule of visits to book, magazines, and digital media companies. So it's quite a summer, and I would like to thank Jennifer Goodwin, our resident SPI assistant director, who has worked so hard for many, many months to make this evening happen. Very popular, Jennifer. And elsewhere in the Center for Publishing, our graduate program continues to grow, with 36 new faculty members and 12 new courses in the last 18 months, as well as 24% growth in enrollment and an expanded digital curriculum and strong schedule of industry visits and events. And we're also getting more global. This fall, our students will volunteer yet again at the Frankfurt International Book Fair. They're also going to Rome, where they'll volunteer at the FIP World Congress of Magazine Publishers, so we're kind of excited about that. For more information about our programs, please do pick up one of the brochures on the table at the back of the room or catch me at the party afterwards. And now it's time for just a brief preview of what's in store tonight. Now, let's face it, there's been a lot of talk this year about challenging times in the magazine industry. So we thought we would take a moment and look at the bright side, at all the innovation and exciting things going on, not to mention how magazine companies are transforming themselves to multi-platform brands and digital technology companies. Tonight, we're going to hear from 4 editors who are taking imaginative and unique approaches to finding new audiences, delivering nuanced and easily consumable content, and shaking up those old molds. We're very fortunate to have as moderator David Carr, who is gifted at eliciting and distilling the kind of candid and freewheeling conversation I know we're going to have this evening. In fact, David has done this for us 8 times now, and he's not only a superb moderator, he's a guy with plenty of star power himself. In fact, when David wound up in the emergency room not long ago with a broken arm, lo and behold, there was Amanda Bynes that night. And David, being such a good reporter, somehow manages to tweet about it with his left hand and made a lot of news himself. Such a good reporter. Seriously, David, whose column, The Media Equation, appears each Monday in the business section of the New York Times, is one of the world's top chroniclers of how we consume and disseminate content. So, David, welcome back. Now, next to David, we have James Bennet. James is the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic and a former reporter and bureau chief of the New York Times. Now, I'm sure that it hasn't always been easy to transform a magazine founded in 1856, correct? Yes? 57, okay, into one of the most talked about and digitally forward media companies in America. But James has done that, helping his magazine win numerous awards, print and digital, and we're eager to hear how. Next to James is Joanna Coles, appointed last fall as the new editor-in-chief of Cosmopolitan magazine. Joanna has been a hard news reporter, editor-in-chief of Marie Claire, and an on-air mentor of Project Runway All-Stars. So I know we're going to hear tonight about the importance of brand extensions and daring to be daring. Next to Joanna, we have Chris Hughes, the co-founder of Facebook and an architect of President Obama's 2008 social media strategy. Now, Chris has been getting a great deal of news lately for his purchase and transformation of the New Republic into a platform for mobile and web while maintaining its commitment to top-notch long-form journalism. Chris, we're eager to hear more about that. And next to Chris is Jane Pratt, a heroine to many who loved her eponymous magazine, Jane, a sometimes irreverent lifestyle magazine for women 18 to 34. Jane has always been in the forefront of media trends, and she now presides over xoJane, a provocative women's website reaching 2 million viewers monthly. For full bios of David and all of our panelists, please, I refer you to your programs. So we look forward tonight to a very exciting conversation. We will have time for a Q&A at the end, and you see mics that are placed around the room, so we will ask you to line up to ask your questions. If any of you have not dropped your business card in the basket by the door, please do so at the end, because we have a nice little door prize later. You'll have to be here at the party to receive that, but we're giving away some good prizes, including a Kindle HD. The hashtag, by the way, tonight is NYU Media Talk, so please feel free to tweet. We'd love that. And at the conclusion of the evening, we do hope you will join us for our 35th anniversary party. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to turn the evening over to David Carr and our wonderful panelists. Thank you.
Notice Andrea didn't talk about how my arm got broke.
I thought she was going to tell us.
I mentioned to her a while ago that perhaps June was going to be a busy month for me, and I had a lot of appearances, and I might not be able to do our eighth session together, and this is what happened. Seriously, as many of you know, Andrea is an absolute force of nature, and anybody who doubts her effectiveness need only look at the talent that she's assembled for this panel. I'm deeply honored to be sitting here with the likes of you. Dean, thanks for having us, and to all the students and various people who came in on this glorious New York night to sit inside and listen to us talk about magazines. I think it's really yours. Well, I wanted to start just ever so briefly because we have, the business that we're in is changing so rapidly. How do you describe, let's start with you, Jane, what business are you in?
I should have had something good to answer to this because you told me that I knew you were going to ask it, and I feel like I should have a big media mogul type answer. But you know what? The business I think that I'm in is the business that I've always been in, which is trying my best to make young women feel good about themselves through the media that I do. And so I started doing that through print and then through TV, radio, a couple of books that didn't do it, weren't successful, but didn't sell, but and now primarily through the websites that I do. So that's not really a very good answer, is it?
Great answer, because it's about building tribe and community and
Right.
and serving those people and creating a sense of affiliation with what you do.
True.
Chris, you've been involved in some fairly big businesses. You sort of changed what we think of when we hear the word friend. And you made this turn into this thing of ours, this publishing thing. What business do you think you're in right now?
We think that we're in the experience business more so than anything else. I don't know if my mic is on, but I'll just talk loudly in hopes that someone, not so much. Maybe.
It'll be hands-on.
Yeah, it's okay.
You can hear him.
I can project even more. How's that? Is that better? I think we're in the experience business. Magazines are not about just going in and reading a single article. They're about choosing a brand and spending, on average, 15 plus minutes with it. And that means a lot of different things for us. It means, I think my mic is coming on gradually, so now I don't have to yell. It means that when we construct, whether it's a magazine or what we have on tablets or what we have on the web, that we think very carefully about what it means to sit down and read. We've designed our whole business around providing an experience that enables people to linger and to trust an editor to curate an experience that they can value. That's really different for us from some of the way that the social web is built, and that's important. It doesn't mean that the social web isn't important to us, because that's how we bring people in. But when we talk about what we monetize, what we sell, it's a print magazine and it's a tablet experience first and foremost.
Joanna, one of the cool things about being in the media business is we get to make stuff. We get to, there's a thingness to it. There's a kind of manufacturing aspect to it. And you've edited any number of magazines, including we worked together at New York a little bit. When you're talking to your guys, I'm going to call them guys, even though they're not, mostly, what do you explain to them? What are you doing when you go into the shop every day? What are you up to?
What I tell everybody when they come to work for me is we are on a voyage of discovery. And Cosmo is really, to get back to your initial question, the business I'm in is the business of Cosmo in all ways. So Cosmo in your pocket, on your device, as a monthly magazine. But really it's in its best form, and when we have an issue that I feel we've hit out of the park. It's really a voyage of discovery about what it's like to be a young woman and all the complexities and nuances that involves. So that's about sex, it's about love, it's about work, it's about money, it's about fashion, it's about beauty. I want you to find all those elements in the magazine. It's also about friendship, and it's also told and explored in a voice that I don't think you will find anywhere else. So that's what I want people to understand when they come to work for me, and I think that's, I hope, the experience you get when you encounter Cosmo in whatever way that is.
James, you work at the Atlantic. I was lucky enough to be there for a cup of coffee for about a year. And you're the other. That's correct. I saw you coming over the hill, and I took off. No, I was fine. When you took the job, I realized you're going to be the one with charged with sort of digitizing this brand that came down the mountain right after the stone tablets, and I thought, well, good luck with that. And yet the Atlantic has turned into a fairly significant digital enterprise. Can you think of what sort of draws together what you do when you make the magazine and when you make the website? What's the through line on all of that?
My one sentence answer to your initial question is that I'm in the journalism business. And to answer the second part of your question, but that means in our case, what we think about all the time is how to hold on to the old ways of doing journalism that are worth holding on to and grab hold of any new means of doing journalism that's worth doing and where it's relevant, useful to our readers to bring those two things together. So that's what we do.
Jane, one of the things I think about is you created not just a magazine, but sort of a way of thinking about being a girl, being a woman, and I think there's,
Nice.
I see your legacy sort of everywhere I look in journalism. I wonder, as somebody who used to make a thing, do you ever miss the plot? The sort of,
Yeah.
we made this, here it is, because you make many beautiful things at xoJane, but they sort of go whooshing.
Totally.
People say, what else do you got?
Yeah.
So do you miss having that thing that people plop on the coffee table?
I do. I used to, when we would get the first bound issues of Sassy or Jane, they'd have the cut corner or whatever, so you weren't supposed to take them out of the office, but of course, like we did, take them home. And I would put it on my, and sorry if I am too loud, I would put it on my coffee table at home, and I would just walk past it, and with some other magazines, and then I'd walk past it again, just see what caught my eye, which one did I want to pick up. There's something so satisfying about that actual physical thing, and I really do miss that part of it. On the other hand, there's the whole, just the immediate conversation that I'm able to have through what I do now that I wasn't able to do then. I would do things like Sassy magazine. We would do these reader-produced issues every year, and it was such a lengthy, cumbersome, expensive prospect to just get basically what now is user-generated content. I mean, we do a big contest. 3 months later, when it actually came out, the readers would send in their applications to come and work on the magazine through snail mail, the only mail we had at that point. And then we would, we'd select. I mean, it just was a lengthy process. And now it's just it's a huge immediate conversation. So I love that part of it.
Chris, I'm interested in, you were sort of there at the birth of a social media network that changed the face of the internet, and then you got involved in a campaign that had historic dimensions, and I'm interested in the kind of thinking that when I think what I need to do now is take over a money-losing bi-weekly magazine with a very small circulation. That's my highest and best use.
People.
Great choice, by the way.
Yeah. Thank you, Jim. I think that there are a couple reasons why I decided to buy the New Republic, and I'm dedicating really all my time to trying to reinvigorate it. The first sounds incredibly naive, but I'm going to own it. It's that the type of journalism that we do is good for democracy and it's good for society. And it's what they teach you in Civics 101, and I bought it hook, line, and sinker. The journalism that we do uncovers new ways of thinking about the world, whether it's politics, culture, society, technology, economics, and hopefully because our readers have read it, they feel like they know a little bit more, or are excited by an idea, enraged by an idea, and want to continue that conversation. So that was, reason number one. I mean, it's the stuff that I think is required for society to work well. I think reason number two was that this is exactly what no one expects to survive. It's we're in a digital age. People want newspapers, magazines. These physical objects are over with. Why would anybody invest in them? And in reality, I think that there is a future, particularly for magazines. I think the newspaper case is a harder one. But I think that there's a real financially sustainable future for magazines, as long as we start to think about these things as curated experiences, which gets back to what I was saying at the beginning. I can't tell you that print is going to be around 10 years from now, although surprisingly, our research shows that it is. For magazines, again, not necessarily for newspapers. 70%. I think it's really different. I think print newspapers are not the same type of experience. They want you to find out. You go to a newspaper to find out first what happened yesterday. It's a big. I think you do.
I think newspapers are more and more a daily magazine experience.
Well, perhaps they're evolving to that. But let me finish the point. You traditionally went to newspapers to find out what happened yesterday, and they were an enormous format, which was dirty to read, hard to read, particularly on the subway, and wasn't necessarily, in my case, at least in my opinion, a pleasurable experience. Maybe the Sunday Times was different than the others. Whereas magazines have historically been something that they're light, they're disposable, you can roll it up, you can put it in your pocket, they're shareable, they've always been more colorful. As a technology, they've had a lot more legs. So my point is I don't know if print will be around 10 years from now. My sense is that it will be, perhaps not as strong as it is now, but I do think that no matter what, people are going to want curated editorial experiences, whether they're getting them on their phones, on their tablets, or in a more traditional method.
Well, in spite of all the mean stuff you just said about
I don't mean it personally.
I do agree with you that the ability of print to sort of signify and represent a kind of intellectual jewelry, a way of, I mean, if you see me walking around with this, all you really know is that I have $500 to buy one of these. You don't really know, am I an Atlantic sort of guy? Am I in touch with my androgynous spirit and sort of a Cosmo sort of guy? And I do think that the signaling that occurs, the thingness, the physical properties, has value. One of the things that you wouldn't know it by looking at you, Joanna, but you've been around for a while in the magazine.
I think you would know that by looking at me. Thank you.
Yes, in the newspaper business, we were at New York together, and you're one of these people from Britain that we bring over to make sure our magazines are sort of interesting. We have to import creativity.
I think that you really import Brits because we're cheap, but keep going.
No, but we love how you sound. You sound so splendid. By the time we're done with this panel, I'll have this vaguely mid-Atlantic but somehow Midwestern accent. But what I think about is, we've been in the business long enough. I can remember when I was doing a lot of blogging and video about the Oscars, I went up to introduce myself to Brad Gray. He said, I know you, I have you on my iTunes, because I was doing video. I'm wondering, as you're editing, when's the last time you thought to yourself, man, this business has changed so much. This is a question I never thought I'd be dealing with.
Well, I'm laughing because when the Dean was introducing and he was talking about people starting on electronic typewriters, I started before electricity. I mean, I started on a manual typewriter, which you carbon copied everything 7 times. And I will tell you, you never made a frickin' mistake, because every time you made a mistake, you had to go through with whiteout 7 times. You cannot imagine what it was like. Look, you know, what people want, I think, I mean, to your point about newspapers dying, is you want news as fast as you can get it, and the technology is completely brilliant for that. A magazine is a different metabolism, and I feel like there's no reason actually why you can't run a marathon and a sprint with all the brands that we're doing at the same time, which is in essence what we are trying to do. And I love going on Twitter and banging out my thoughts about whatever happens to be going on, and I also like taking 10 pages to explore a subject which you can't say in 140 characters. And Chris is right, there are all sorts of pieces we do that are protected we have the opportunity and the luck and the passion to write about, which are really important, and they're ideas that people should know about, and they're protected because we also write about beauty and fashion and sex, and the balance of that allows us to do both. And my anxiety, to your point, is that the balance of all that is shifting, and that the more serious things get squeezed out for the list of 10 things a rabbit did yesterday, which are all very well, but not if the expense is at real things that are going on. And I think right now, tonight, we are living through such an interesting moment with the NSA, and you say we don't know what you're looking at on there. The NSA knows what you're looking at on there. And it's such an interesting moment for serious journalism. But it's a really important moment for actually serious journalism. Whatever you think of Snowden's actions, it couldn't be a more interesting moment.
But James, when we talk about balance, I mean, fundamentally, as you said, the Atlantic, all of us up here are prosecuting journalism in one form or the other, but the Atlantic, I think of the long thought, the big, long thought, and I think to myself, given all this stuff you have to keep track of, how can you even have that long thought? How can you even, because stuff is whooshing at you all the time.
And I don't think it's fundamentally it's not about print versus digital. I mean, I think that's the wrong way to think about this. It is about sort of good versus bad. It's about trivial versus substantive, and there's a place for trivial. I mean, I'm not against trivial. I'm all for it, and it's all about the balance and ensuring that, as you called it, the long thought. I actually don't like the term long form period. I know I'm in the long, what we now call in the trade, the long form business, but it's not a term that means anything to a reader. All they hear is long, right? Again,
too long didn't read.
Too long didn't read. Like, it's good or it's not good. And we do lots of stuff on our, we're really lucky. We've got a great group of people. The magazine's doing quite well. Print circulation is as large as it's ever been, larger. And we'll do, depending on how you measure, we have a much larger audience than we've ever had, thanks to what we do digitally. And we do very long stuff and deeply reported stuff only in the digital environment. And we do very short stuff in the magazine, and we also do very long stuff in the magazine. But thanks to Chris, actually, and others like him, thanks to the rise of the social network, and I'm sure we're all finding this, long, deeply reported stuff works in the digital environment. People are more likely to share your content if they think it's good and if they think it'll make them look good.
Yep.
And in the search-driven environment, we were in this race to the bottom where it was really all about the headline.
You think social is a friend of long form?
I think social is I think social is a friend of good stuff.
Well, not if you're running stuff like, social is not necessarily a friend of, so a lot of the really confessional stuff that we do, like it happened to me, I had a yeast infection for 4 years, does not do well on social. But it is a good, important story. So we've taken to sort of...
Jane, I bet it does well on what the fancy term is dark social.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, probably true.
But
What?
No, go ahead.
What dark social.
Like Chris talked about.
No. All I was gonna say is what we find, and this may be different than what others are finding, is we find sort of two kinds of pieces do really well on the social web, which is increasingly just the web. I mean, we talk about the social web, but when you combine Facebook, Twitter, and then email and what's called dark social, where you assume that people are passing around links to get directly to a piece. They're not coming through the front door, but they're not necessarily coming from Facebook and Twitter. It's over 50% of our web traffic now. What we see, two kinds of things work really well. One is big idea pieces that often run in print, but don't always. So this will be something like, the science of loneliness, or how the NRA is actually much weaker than the conventional wisdom is. Those things go crazy. Even though they're long, they tend to be 5,000 words, and much of that traffic is driven by social. Or we see things that might be shorter and more digestible, bite-sized, one direct idea delivered in, say, 600 words, but that's very timely and part of the news cycle. Those are the sort of the two categories that we see getting a lot of traction on the web. Things that are a little bit more of a musing or something that isn't timely, but nor is it really deeply researched. Those things tend to fall in between. It doesn't mean it's not important journalism. We often put a lot of that stuff in print, but it doesn't necessarily perform on the web. But when we look at it, social is definitely not only a friend of this kind of long stuff. I mean, it's the primary driver of traffic to a lot of it for us.
When I was thinking about tonight and sort of what threaded the panel together, I thought, well, you're all assembling tribes, right? And sometimes you leverage ads against those tribes. Sometimes you build a conference business around it. Sometimes you go and directly ask them for money, you know, the reader side of it. And part of what I was thinking about is, you, Jane, you were always in that business, sort of the sassiness of it all, the us girls in this together, and you had a community long before they could efficiently and talk back to you in this friction-free way.
Right.
So you must be loving the fact that you're now in the conversation with these people that, you know,
Yeah.
they've always been your friends.
It's awesome.
Just harder to meet them.
Right. I mean, the whole idea of social media anyway, and that whole term, I feel like it's like what I was trying to do 25 years ago, but we didn't have the technology to do it in the way that we can now. And also, I mean, just thinking about what you were saying about leveraging your tribe or whatever. We used to back in Sassy, we would make underwear with Sassy on it and sell it through the issues and all kinds of stuff. And it was always about, like, let's all really. It was always about all the brand extensions and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
One of the things that Andrea was warming us up with was, you know, we're increasingly in a measurable environment, and there's metrics that apply to what they do. In the good old days, we just write whatever the hell we want.
Yeah.
Like, I used to work at a weekly, we do these big long heaves, and then whenever we do surveys, we find out, no, people pick up our paper for the bar ads and the sex ads. And, are you guys, as a group, glad that we're in a more measurable environment and that we can tell what's connecting or what's not, or do you long for the old days when nobody knew what the hell they were doing?
And we could lie to advertisers so easily, right? I remember going around and ad sales calls and being like, well, we have this number of subscribers, we have this number, we sell this number of newsstand copies, but our pass-along readership is through the roof. So therefore, you know, we could just make stuff up.
When Milk Karmazian was shown at Google, where Google could say, you don't have to give people the whole value, we can just give you exactly what you want. And he just said, you are fucking with the magic. When it comes to inefficiency in media buys, we have another name for that. It's called profit.
Yeah.
So is it good that we can be measured or?
Well, I just to argue one point though, I've never worked at a place where it wasn't measured. We always knew every single day when I was in The Guardian how many copies we sold that day. We knew when I was at The Spectator how many copies we sold that week. We knew exactly how many. And I mean, in a sense, and I always think it's an interesting argument when politicians say, oh, well, you're the media, you know, you're not elected like we are. We are elected because we're elected by the people that purchase us or choose to read us on the web. And so you have a very strong connection. I don't understand this idea that we haven't been monitored. We've always been monitored. You know exactly, everybody has the sales figures, or for the most part in Britain, We certainly had them, and
But you didn't
feel-
know. You,
This was
and-
built on a tissue of lies. I mean,
No, I actually don't.
your
I think
circulation, and then some guy in New Jersey would back up a truck, and I mean,
I just think we didn't work for the same places, or
but
maybe that was going on at
you
New York
also-
Magazine and I didn't
but-
know.
but-
I would
you didn't-
definitely say I see the figures every month. You live and die by the figures. Editors live and die by the figures.
But you didn't know why people were buying that copy. You didn't know what it was in that issue of the magazine or the newspaper that they were buying it for, what they were actually reading. Now we know how long they're spending reading it, whether.
I would also disagree with that. I mean, I think you do know, and that's why you go into the business. You kind of do.
Your instincts.
Well, I mean, you know from very basic things, especially on a newspaper, when you have a very, very big story, you know people are going to warm to that story and want to know more about it in a very simple news form. But I think if you're an editor and you're good and you're true to yourself, you know when you do an issue that's going to sell. You have the sense of the alchemy and that fucking magic, to use Mel's term, that actually produces something that has a fabulosity to it, that people will respond to. And you also know when you've produced a dud and you just, it goes out of the door. And actually, my reaction, whenever I get a first bound in, is to leave the room. I never want to see the first bound.
Really?
I'm like, oh no!
Oh, man!
I'm like disappointed, I'm dismayed.
Oh my God.
It's
so funny.
It's a pavilion to my crushed dreams. Everything I should have done, which I forgot to do. Oh yeah, I was very impressed by your confidence. I can't look at it for 6 weeks.
when I edited a weekly, I had a saying that I share with myself. Sometimes it's not very good. Every once in a while. That's the thing about print is it's great that you snatch a moment and grab it, the fabulosity, as you say, but every once in a while, there it is for all to see. Kind of a dud.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas on the web, you can amend, you can fix, you can. I want to know, as consumers, I'm assuming you guys all own tablets. Is that true? Do any of you consume magazines on tablets? Which
Not very
ones
much.
and why?
Someone else, because I don't
do all the
very
time.
often.
I read, what do I read on the tablet? I read The New Yorker.
You read Cosmo?
Always.
But on the tablet
Well,
versus
reads
print.
Cosmo, there it is.
No, I read The New Yorker. I read, if you count Slate as a magazine, I read Slate.
I
Slate's native app. I read ours. Occasionally The Atlantic, although more often in print. Those are the ones that I probably read most often.
I feel like that,
No.
that when the iPad came and said, "Oh, it's here, our savior."
Oh, yeah.
It's gonna be, and do you feel like
No.
it didn't really pan out that way, did it?
Well,
It's early. It's been 2 years.
I hate to be the naysayer, but actually the tablet's been very good for Cosmo. So we have almost 300,000 subscribers on Cosmo at sort of, they're paying $20 a year, which is actually quite good in terms of circulation revenue for us. And I don't know if that's because the nature of some of the content means that you want to consume it in private, or I think a lot of our readers, like I do, travel, and so they may get the magazine as well, although I suspect what's happening is that people are graduating to the tablet. But I'm a huge fan, and if you aren't on it, I really strongly urge you to be on it, and I have no investment in this. But Next Issue is an extraordinary thing where you can get the next issue of any magazine. It's $6.99 a month or something incredibly cheap, and you can look at anything. So I look at hundreds of magazines that I wouldn't normally bother to buy at the newsstand, just because it's this sort of cornucopia laid out. It's really exciting.
Do you guys make as much money off of it if people look at it through Next Issue? Or, I mean,
No,
'cause
you
that's
don't.
one-
You don't make as much money off it if you do it from Next Issue. But from the point of view of a consumer, it's fantastic. And as a magazine consumer, I love it. But no, we don't as much as when we sell individual subs.
Do you ever think of the magazine as a brochure or a hood ornament for the digital brand? In other words, we maintain presence in the marketplace with this, but generally we're moving toward being a digital brand, and this is just a physical reminder, because one of the things that I'm always struck by is if a magazine makes it to my nightstand, it will at least guilt me by its physical presence. It will say, you have to read me. Whereas if this guy is closed, you know, you get through the New Yorker on the iPad, but I would, unless the New Yorker piled up, unless the Atlantic piled up and made me feel like a lesser human being because I wasn't getting through that, I don't think I would read it. It doesn't beckon me in the same way.
Well, I mean, that's depressing to hear, and we're doing something wrong if our only compelling argument for you to read us is guilt.
There are brands that do
That is not an
Covers
industry that deserves
that
this.
you have.
We get enough guilt in our lives. No, I mean, again, I mean, there are a bunch of different questions in there. First of all, hood ornament or not hood ornament. Again, I think about the journalism that we do and the different platforms, to use the term, in which we present it, is a secondary question. So what matters is the quality of the work, right? And we'll use whatever means we can to get that in front of people and get it across to them, whatever works. That's what we care about. And doing the kind of journalism of ideas, I think our ambitions are similar in this respect, that our readers respond to, and that advances their thinking and provokes them and pisses them off, and all the rest of it makes them want to engage with us. And the nightstand is one place for us to appear that can convince people to read us. The other place, again, the social network, means a lot to have a friend say, you really got to read this piece. I mean, it's like the old newsroom conversation, newspaper in the morning of, did you read this piece? Did you see that piece? Did you hear this? And now that's taking place on a grand scale. And it's on us to make our work compelling enough that it rises to the top in that conversation for our tribe.
Chris, I'm interested in, as an immigrant to print land, did you ever look around and say, man, this is weird. This is, we've all sort of grown up in it and thought, well, this is how things have always been done. And did you ever sort of look at it and go, this is such a strange business?
It is a very strange business. Yes, there's no question that it's a strange business. But I think that there's a clear business logic for magazines, prints and tablet now than 10 years ago. And the reason I think that's true is because of the web and the social web. The way that we think about this sort of stuff is in many ways similar to a lot of startups do it. I mean, they think of a freemium model, right? Like 90% of the people use Dropbox for free, but 10% of them, or 95% use it for free, 5% will be willing to pay a few dollars a month. And you can build very large companies based off of that logic. For us, it's more or less the same. And we have a couple million people who visit us on the web and who spend nearly 2 minutes on each page. Those folks, for the most part, get our content for free. It's great for them, but it's also great for us because it's brand exposure. It's our prerogative to convert as little as 2% of that major influx of people into people who buy experiences, into people who want print or the tablet. And what we found in a lot of the research is there really are two different kinds of readers in 2013. I'm sure there are more than two, but there are two main categories of readers in 2013. Some of them sound like they're like you, David, who read voraciously on the web all day long. These people are constantly using Twitter, Facebook, their own favorite sites to just read all day on the web. Then there's another group of readers, which I actually have always been a part of, which is people who tend to do other things on the web, but choose a brand to spend time with in the evenings, on the weekends, in a different format, where I'm lingering a longer session time and more in depth. Neither of these is better than the other. There's a lot of people in both categories, but I do think that the second category of reader, which is more so the traditional magazine reader, is what we need to monetize. But we have the opportunity to introduce so many more of those people to our brand now than we would have 10 years ago before the social web or the web at all existed.
Again and again, we, it's very important that we talk about community, but I'm interested in Well, Joanna, like, your readers, they've always been sort of an important source of content at Cosmo. The letters, the questions. How do you manage communities so it doesn't... We're in an age, I'm sorry I'm having trouble articulating this, but we're stepping toward the readers and saying, you're enrolled, this is not a megaphone, this is conversation. But managing community is really, really tough in terms of making sure the good stuff rises to the top, making sure you don't create a toxic environment, making sure it's a safe place to talk and share. So what do you do to make sure that the Cosmo community is a healthy, good place that burps up a lot of content that drives traffic?
Well, actually, that's, I think, a question better aimed at Jane, because you're much better at doing that than Cosmo has been. And we're in the process of enormous change at Cosmo digitally. So we're not actually there yet. We have a great relationship with readers. I have a lot of personal emails with readers. We have a lot of readers come into the building and talk. But the thing that I think you do very well when you put up a story is you get this extraordinary conversation going, and you might have, well, why don't you, you could talk to that better than I could.
Because one of the things I found, there were a lot of challenges when I switched over to doing just digital. And one of them, and when you were talking about the hood ornament before too, I was thinking, one of them is that it's like there's no newsstand. There's no place where people are going to naturally see this. I've got to figure out ways to bring them here. They're not going to see it and then decide whether they want it or not. I've got to figure out like how to get them to come in the first place. But that was a little bit off topic. What was the other thing I was thinking? Go back to what you were saying. It made sense in my mind at the time.
It's an interesting question. How do you stop the comments?
Oh, yes.
How do you monitor the comments so
they
don't disintegrate?
Thank you.
Basically?
That was the other. Yeah. So the other realization was just, and we all know it from anybody who's been online knows how mean people are when they have that anonymity, right? So one of the things that I've done with xoJane is to constantly, I'm in the comments all the time, and just constantly reminding them, it's not intentional actually, it's just the way that I like to do it, because who doesn't, when you write something or put something out there, what are you most obsessed with? Like what the feedback is to that, right? Don't we, I think we probably all spend a lot of time looking at what people are saying about what the work we've done. You don't what? No, you don't go in them.
Well, you end up wanting to kill yourself.
I'll go in there and I'll say like, if they point out something that I did wrong, and I'll say, oh yeah, I was having a bad day, I was getting my period or whatever. Just say something that makes you like a real person, like you are, and then they'll come back and they'll be like, oh my God, I just had the worst period of my life. Like we're best friends, And you get, it just like, it makes you're a real person. You're no longer just someone that they can bash without feeling.
I always neglect that. I'm going to mention my period.
Do it. Try it. Try it.
Okay, but I want to tee you up a little bit. One guy...
Yeah, this is the guy I want to talk about.
That has solved this problem. Is Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Yep.
So he won a National Magazine Award this year. Good for him. But the thing that's most amazing is his comments are like a self-cleaning oven. It's the one place where you go in and people look after each other and they talk about it. And a lot of times, he'll mention something and say, here's the keys, you guys talk about it. And I think, oh my God, that's like the perfect media model. Is you mention a topic and then say, create content.
Yeah.
Like Tom Sawyer talked to me, create an offense and comes back and said, it's really fun, you should give it a try. By the way, we're not going to pay you for doing this, but
yeah.
How do you do it?
It isn't a self-cleaning oven in the sense that he's worked so hard to make it happen. And we're all over the map on this. You know, we do some user-generated stuff well. We handle comments some areas well. We do it really my fault, nobody else's fault. In other areas, we don't do it as well as we should. Ta-Nehisi is, in my view, the best in our business at this. He's a writer for the Atlantic, has been for several years. His view of his comments is that it's a dinner party. It's his dinner party. And you're free, or it's his bar. And you can come in there, but if you misbehave, he gets to set the rules. He gets to determine when your behavior has crossed a line. And you're free to go to the bar down the street. He doesn't owe anybody to stay in there. And he's, over the course of several years now, he has pushed people out. And the others who stayed have seen that, and they've learned from it, and they've really valued it. And they see themselves very intensely as a tribe. They're drawn to his particular kind of voracious intellect, just in his curiosity. But they also engage with each other, so he can now, every day, he just says, over to you. And he opens up a thread, and there's this kind of rich debate that is led, and he's actually been able to now recruit specific commenters to actually enforce it when he doesn't have the time to do it. Let me tell just quickly about, he won the National Magazine Award for an essay he wrote for us last year. Oldest form of magazine writing in many ways, right? Essay writing. Print, triumph. It was for the print magazine. But the morning after Ta-Nehisi won this award,
It was Fear of a Black President.
Fear of Black President was the name of the piece. And it was about Obama, race, the American electorate. A very, very complex and long piece of work. Morning after he writes it, he gets up and writes a blog post thanking his commenters because he'd been working out these ideas on our site for a couple of years and soliciting feedback and honing his thinking and actually getting some of his reporting done this way. So is that we call that a print triumph? Do we call it a digital triumph? It's a journalistic triumph. And by the way, the Atlantic owes a huge debt of gratitude to David Carr, who's the guy who sent me an email a few years ago saying, by the way, there's this writer, Ta-Nehisi Coates, you really need to meet this guy, and sent him to the Atlantic. So.
Yeah, but I think what's interesting to think about is Ta-Nehisi was fired out of three jobs. Like Time Magazine had no use for him. Village Voice didn't want him, and again, people say, well, where are the talented, great black voices? And I always think, well, they're sitting right in front of you. You just need to sort of think about what it is that you're after. I'm interested in the conference business. Now, you're going to Aspen, right?
Yeah.
Is that your conference, or?
We co-sponsor it with the Aspen Institute. It's called the Aspen Ideas Festival. And we have a very large now events business, which is an important part of our overall
Is the money real? Is it significant?
Yeah. I mean, by our standards, and it is, absolutely. But it means we do more than 100 events a year. It's a big lift to do that. We have an awesome group of people who are terrific at producing the events, and the ambition is to do a kind of live experience, to use the word Chris was using earlier, of the kind of journalism.
Joanna, are you in the conference business at all?
Well, we're not in the conference business, but in previous jobs I've been in we've had very successful partnerships with television, which is incredibly useful in terms of leveraging advertising and also boosting sales, actually. And I've always enjoyed it, and it's enormous fun. I think the other thing we mustn't forget here, especially as you're all aspiring to work in the media, and the thing that it makes it sound rather gloomy, I will tell you, it is so much fun working in a magazine. I'm not going to apologize for it. I get up every morning and I skip to work. I'm so excited. And it's just an absolute hoot.
But why? Why is it so fun?
Because I guess you're exploring things that I'm interested in. I think if you can work for a media organization that actually, where you get the opportunity to cover and think about the ideas that you're interested in, it never ever feels like work. And I feel fortunate that whatever I've done, I've been able to do that, were it hard news or media or politics or economics. At the time, I've always been very interested, and I'm particularly interested in women's issues right now because women have many, many big important, weird issues going on in the culture now. And it's fantastic to be able to explore them. And, you know, it's fun to be able to have an audience and engage with them and have conversations, whatever it's about. And it's fun being able to have the digital part of that and to also get incredibly fast reaction when you put something out on a newsstand, not to have to wait a week for the snail mail to come in or the phone calls to come in, but immediately, you know, if you have a big piece or a big interview or a news breaking piece in your magazine, to have the reactions here, the ripple effect across social media is just fantastic.
I don't know. I was just so agreeing with all of that. How much fun it is. It's so much fun. And then also in the immediacy part of it. Like I was able to put up on the site today, like, you know, what should I wear to this thing? And it's like in a couple of hours, you get like hundreds and hundreds of people who you and.
They did a really nice job.
They did okay. Don't you love these? They liked the shoes. This is actually not even what they picked. I screwed up. The thing they picked, I thought was so surely going to get rejected, and it's all borrowed clothes anyway. So I had given that back. So they didn't pick it. Oh well.
They get credit for
And
the
I-
shoes.
Yeah, they get credit for the shoes.
Chris, have you been doing a lot of skipping to work lately?
I have. I mean, I love what I'm doing. It's more energizing for me than just about anything I've done because I get to do politics and literature and culture and technology and have a big challenge every day. I mean, you know, the future of this business is, if anything, you know, it's certainly not clear or not certain, but it challenges all different parts of my personality. So I love
We
it.
shouldn't do a panel without talking about ad models in magazine business. We shouldn't talk about sort of native advertising without clobbering the hell out of you. I mean, we got to mention who was I rated a good one. Wow. Who was the genius that said, hey, let's cook up some good inline advertising for the Church of Scientology. That's a good idea.
Let me talk about where I screwed up in this thing, if I could. I don't. It's not my role to pick and choose advertisers, and you guys may disagree with me about this. It's not. I don't think it's properly my role to do that. For reasons we can discuss if you want to. You guys probably don't even know what it. Maybe you do know, maybe you don't know, but there's this. You know, semi-new form of advertising called native advertising. In my view, it's actually a very old form of advertising called an advertorial. It's just now in the digital space as opposed to in the print space.
Yeah.
Or a word from our sponsor in television or in an event. And the Atlantic has been, and our company has been, in the forefront of experimenting with this. And we ran a native campaign from the Church of Scientology earlier this year. You know, there's a basic rule that governs the relationship with advertising, in my view, whether it's in print or whether it's on the web or whether it's an event, which is that you shouldn't confuse the reader about what's editorial and what's advertising. And if you think about that and pay attention to it, it simplifies a lot of these issues. And
but that wasn't really the problem with this, though. It wasn't that there was confusion. It said it was weird. but the controversy you got into wasn't, oh, the Atlantic is writing these. No, nobody thought it was your magazine. See?
Oh, I don't think that's true. I think there was real confusion about it partly because of the fact, and again, this is on me. We were actually moderating the comments on this piece of sponsored content and monitoring them in such a way that we were excluding negative comments. And so we were doing, and we weren't transparent with our users about what we were doing. So we were breaking our compact with our readers. We realized it very quickly. We pulled it down immediately. We apologized the next day and developed a set of, or redeveloped and refined our ad guidelines, which are posted on our site, to try to ensure nothing like this happens again. But that's where, I mean, you know, we screwed that up.
I think in some ways, just watching that from the outside a little bit, I think it also illustrates the major difference between advertorial historically and sponsored content today. And it's that sponsored content today, it has to be good both for the advertiser and for the consumer, which maybe you disagree, but you know, I think in that case, because it wasn't as clear as, you know, you said that folks wanted it to be, it was sort of confusing, which wasn't a good experience for the reader, because is this Atlantic content? Is it sponsored content? Where's it coming from? Whereas in the past, if that had happened in print or somewhere, you would have never had that kind of feedback mechanism. And to me, that sort of illustrated the difference between the advertorial historically and what it is today.
Yeah, and in fact, the first I knew about it was when it hit my, you know, I've got a tweet deck running within at the Atlantic kind of search feed. And the first I knew about it was when it crossed my feed and people were saying, what's going on with the comments on this sponsored post. So there is
So
a
you
feedback
knew about it
loop.
right away?
Well, I mean, right away.
But not before you became a cautionary tale on.
I was,
That's the fact that we're talking about it.
I was so happy that you did do those guidelines, though, those really clear guidelines, because then I could steal from those, because I never had guidelines about what should be in sponsored content or native advertising or whatever, and what shouldn't be. And I think the thing about moderating the comments, even when you were talking before about the dinner party, how you can not have whatever, you know what I'm talking about. Okay. You can, I think one of the main things is you can kick people out of the dinner party, but just by responding to them, or by not responding to them, which people don't like to not get a response either, but not by just taking down their comments. And I think that with sponsored content too, I think transparency is really key. And what we do is we'll just put, like, we did some, you know, Clairol, we were like, this post is brought to you by our friends at Clairol, AKA Charlotte, who's my 10-year-old daughter, Charlotte's college fund. You know, like, put it out there. It is what it is. I'm getting money from this thing. And then let people say in the comments whatever they're gonna say, and make sure the advertiser knows that beforehand.
Especially in the women's magazining space, don't you think that we're moving toward an environment where, if you think of like Net-a-Porter,
Yeah.
LVMH, if you look at something one way, it's editorial. But if you then tilt it on its side, you know, price points emerge, and you're then in a transactional environment, especially at Hearst, which I think is doing a lot of thinking about this. They're providing advertisers below the line services, new ways of reaching. Do you think that the old sort of firewalls are disappearing, and that we're going to end up in a more transactional environment when we're looking at a magazine?
You know, one of the things I'm most proud of, actually, since I got to Cosmo, is getting rid of the sort of, I don't quite know what to call them, the classified ads at the back of the mag that were really, I wasn't quite sure.
Trashy.
Well, they were very trashy and depressing, and I felt that if this is a magazine that is trying to, as I am trying to, reclaim Helen Gurley Brown's amazing sort of DNA of that magazine, when it was just culturally important, every single month was an event when this juggernaut of a magazine came out. And I was really talking about empowering women, which is what I'm very committed to doing. Then we couldn't have these ads at the back of the magazine. And, you know, magazines are businesses. I don't want to do anything that's going to rock the business, but at the same time, I didn't feel that we could live with this hypocrisy at the back of the magazine. So we removed the ad pages. You know, it's a sizable chunk of money. So my main anxiety, and one of the things that we wrestle with all the time, is that a lot of the celebrities that we want to put on the cover of the magazine are also used to, you know, big beauty and fashion campaigns, and we don't often see that art for the campaign until it comes in, and we may have this person on the cover. So that's my constant challenge every month. And they may have, you know, if it's a big cosmetic advertiser, they may have 6 or 10 big celebs signed up, and we might have one of them on the cover. And then it's always a scramble to make sure that we don't look like we're in some way collaborating with them. So I would say that's our sort of biggest challenge. And we're figuring things out on the web, but that's all in process at the moment.
My spidey sense is tingling and telling me that it's probably time to get you guys involved in this little seance that we're having up here. But the one question that we always sort of wait for at these things is, you saw all these shiny faces of these people that are graduating out into the world, and the only reason that they showed up is they thought you might give them some tips about what they should be doing. 2 things I would say about that. One is, you're lucky. It's a great time to be going into this business. The tools that we have at our disposal, you know, it's amazing. It's too bad the web destroyed the business model that we all were working on. I'm a little sad about that. But in terms of would I choose to be a journalist now or 20 years ago, it's a great time to be heading out in the business. The other thing is it's a great panel. I mean, these are really a smart, good group. So I'm dying to hear what you have to say about if you were heading out into the world, what advice would you give these guys?
You know, trying to make mine more.
I think it's very, very straightforward. This business is all about ideas. If you have a good idea, I or one of my team, for the most part, will hire you to write it. But it has to be a good idea. It can't be a mediocre idea. It can't be a subject or a topic that you happen to be interested
or
in.
Or an anniversary. Or
right. It has to be a genuine idea. You have to have a story. Media is about stories. People love stories. That's what we do. That's what we tell. Bring me a story.
Yeah, and one thing that I've, building on both of those points, one of the reasons that I drifted into this business and stayed into it and have always loved about it is your job as a journalist is to learn something new every day. That's what you do. You know, your job is to learn about new stuff and tell other people about it in as compelling way as you possibly can. Tremendous privilege to have, to be in a profession where it's basically about a lifetime of learning. You guys are having a great experience here this summer and you're learning a lot. It can't stop when you walk out of here. I mean, you're gonna have to be learning, and this is the way that our business has changed, new skills all the time for the rest of your career and being open to completely changing the way you're doing the work. And I think what's important is to be straight in your own head about what your values are, what you care about doing. You know, what kind of ideas, what kind of stories you want to tell, what kind of ideas you want to get across, and why you're in the business in the first place. Are you in it to make a lot of money, or are you in it because you want to learn new things and tell other people about them? I mean, I think you got to be clear in your own head about what you're hoping to get out of this experience.
I would add that a strong social media presence is really helpful, and a willingness to put yourself out there and to put yourself out there in a very raw, real-time kind of way, and tell your personal stories too, because that's one way to know that your idea is unique to you. If it's something that you personally have gone through, then no one else has gone through it. And when I say put yourself out there in a very immediate way, I look a lot now at clips that I get in from people, and granted I'm like strictly in digital right now, but I get a lot of clips in from people like someone's coming to mind recently applying for a job, and her, and it was a lot of first-person reporting, but the images of herself that she had included were clearly like they were very filtered, you know. They obviously took a lot of time to produce. And now the way I look at it, and I ended up meeting with her, and actually she ended up getting the job, but I had to have a big talk with her first about how you're not going to have hours and hours and hours and, you know, all kinds of Photoshop and filters and, you know, to look exactly the way that you wanted to look for in that story. You're going to have to be willing to just, oh, that's another one, video and photography skills. If you have those two, super helpful. But you're going to have to be willing to just like grab a picture of yourself and stick it right up there for millions of people to see. So,
I would say something somewhat similar. I mean, my biggest suggestion would be tweet. I mean, and not just because I think Twitter is really important, but I think everything that goes into being active on Twitter probably helps your career. I think that you can't wait for anybody to come to you. I think that's actually what's so powerful about a lot of the people in this room that are part of a millennial generation. There's this sense that, you know, we have to create our own careers, create our own futures, and whether it's tweeting or setting up a Tumblr blog or a presence on Facebook, it's not just being on social media. That's not going to do it. It's you got to be on social media, but you got to be showing that you're curious, that you're well informed, that you're open to discourse, that you're a self-starter. Because I would much rather see, you know, the flashpoints of a smart social media usage to understand a person than a resume or, and you know, any type of formal training or formal skills.
You should be making your way up to the mics. Right? It's about that time. Nobody asked me, but I do want to give my own advice as well. You have the tools in your hands. You have to make stuff. I think pitching ideas is one thing, but to say, look, I went to Governor's Island this weekend. What I remember mostly is the mud. And I made a Tumblr that's an ode to the mud. And what I heard, what I saw, I can use Final Cut Pro, and this is the video that I made. I know how to work with digital audio recordings, and this is my church, and I built a house for Habitat for Humanity, and this is sort of an audio story of what we did. This is what, you know, you have to be sort of like James Franco was in Spring Breakers, which is, this is my stuff. This is what I did. This is what I made. As Joanna explained, ideas are important. But I used to hire a lot of young people, and you know what? I want to see what you made with your own two little hands. I want to see what you did again and again. And I want to see a blog about something besides you and your cat and how he rolled over. I want to see over and over, as Chris said, who you are reflected through the prism of social media, through digital media that you've manipulated with your own hands. I want to see that you have an understanding, if not just a facility with HTML5. I want to see over and over that you're intellectually curious, that you have good hands, that you know how to manipulate and use social media. Many of these CMSs that have been put in your hands are beautiful. You can make amazing things, and just show me what you can do. You've been very patient. Go ahead.
Is it on? Hello? Well, first off, I would say great panel. So a lot of you have talked about this transition from the typewriter to what it is today. I was just curious to see, in your opinion, what was the hardest transition? Was it like the app? Was it the digital edition, web? Which one's the hardest to master as a brand identity?
next one, you know, they're all hard.
You have an identity, brand identity on Twitter, you have your own personal Twitter, you have the Atlantic Wire, you have the app, you have, you know, what was the toughest math test you would crack?
I mean, I'm sorry, I'm struggling to answer that question. I mean, I do think we probably haven't, you know, cracked it yet. It's hard. I mean, you know, change. It sounds so. I mean, it just sounds so banal to talk about this. Though change is hard, and for us, what was tremendously liberating was, and we talk about this all the time internally, is being willing not to focus on the way we do things, which is writing long stories and fact-checking them and copy-editing them, but what we do, which is advancing big ideas. That's what we do, journalism of ideas. And it's tremendously liberating if you think about it in those terms, because then you start thinking in terms of we want to take advantage of any tool that we can get our hands on to do that. One of those tools, one of the most effective ones, happily enough, is big, long stories. So we get to keep doing those as long as that continues to be effective. And I think it will be for a long time in print and probably forever in the digital environment. Maybe it was getting that mindset, kind of making that turn, which we did actually quite a while ago now, and dealing with some of the fear, understandably, that all of us feel about well, what does this mean for the old ways, that really kind of enabled us to, you know, really begin experimenting, which means taking some chances and falling on your face and becoming, what do you call it, a poster child or whatever, for when you do make a mistake. And this is, you all will face this over and over again in your own careers, and you know, the trick is to be transparent and honest about it and own it and learn from it.
I want to sneak in one little question on the back of yours, which is, why do print brands generally stick so much when it comes to video? You've had some success with television. No, I'm talking to you. Why is it so hard for us to come up with compelling and good video?
Well, actually, I have a slightly different answer to your question, which I would just like to visit for a second, because this is important to all of you in terms of thinking about what you're actually going to do now. My hardest transition, where's the girl that asked the question? There you are. My hardest transition, actually, David was there for it, was when I stopped being a reporter and became an editor. And there are so many different jobs in this world, but James said as he sat down, because we'd been talking about this NSA story, that he missed being out there as a reporter. And, you know, often as you climb up the ladder or, you know, cross the jungle gym, you move from, because not everybody can afford to just buy a magazine like Chris did, you know, you go from being the sort of active collector of ideas and making the stuff to being the person that's directing the traffic, as it were. And I would say that in terms of my actual career and understanding the media, that was the hardest transition for me. A desk job actually at New York Magazine was the hardest job I ever had. That transition from being out in the field, from controlling my time, to figuring out what I wanted to cover
I don't know why
was really hard.
Would ever do it. Why would you give up? Like, when I saw the trends and what was going on with media, I thought, I'm not going to be inside the board managing content. I'm going to make content. It's a lot better.
Well, I'll tell you exactly why I did it, and this is a room. Can I just ask for a show of hands of women? All the women, put your hands up. All the men, put your hands up. All right. So, I was just checking that there really were that many more women than men. I did it because I had children and I couldn't be on the road anymore, and that's a reality for many of you if you decide you want to have a family. But I had 2 kids. I couldn't just travel at the drop of a hat, which is what I'd always done, and it never dawned on me that I would have to stop traveling, but I did, so I took a desk job, and that was a really hard transition. But now it's really fun.
Now that I see all these people lined up at the microphones, I'm so sorry I didn't go to questions earlier. So we're going to go through them real quick.
I don't know that we could go through them all, but maybe maybe we could do a few, and then anybody who...
I didn't say we're going to get to them all. I just said we're going to cut to them. So
All right.
All right, I'll talk about that. So I'll project. So I'm one of those group of people that really loves fact checking, and I've been hearing a lot that, especially with online journalism, that you kind of have to start checking your own work, and then fact checking has kind of become not a really common job. How do you feel like online has kind of changed the importance of fact checking? Is it going now? Oh. Okay.
We can hear you perfectly.
All right. How do you feel like the role of the fact checker has been changing with the insurgence of online journalism?
I think it's the skills super important. I mean, I think more than ever, in a way, as people are more and more wary of of things being put out there that aren't well fact checked. But I do think it to me seems like it's more of something you would do within other job, a larger job, as opposed to on its own. Although in print, it is still a job unto itself. Yeah.
one of the things I wanted to say about that, when Joanna talked about when you were first on the Underwood typewriter and typing, and you never made a mistake, I think we're back to that now, where you're your own grandpa, you're your own fact checker, and one of the advantages, like Brian Stelter, who I work with, who's a digital native, he's a clean writer. He never puts in anything that isn't like CQ fact checked right away. We're so used to working with the net that I think we've now come back to the place where we're sort of, we have to have that fact checker built in, and we don't. If you can't write clean copy, you are so screwed.
Yeah.
You are so.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we've come back to that place. Go ahead, please.
This is a question for James. You guys recently hired an entrepreneur in residence, and I was just wondering, what was the rationale behind that, and what exactly is the role of an entrepreneur in residence?
Well, we're going to find out. It's another experiment. No, we had the opportunity to bring in a wonderful editor named Andrea Chambers, actually a frontline guy, part of the video. How do you figure out how to do good video? And so he is supposed to help he is going to help hugely, actually, with several initiatives that we have underway. We're doing a big expansion of our video this year, and we've got a couple new paid content, so-called products coming, and he's going to be, I think, an important contributor of new ideas to that. The thought was it was an opportunity to kind of create another sort of interstitial role at the magazine where he'd be able to play in a lot of different areas without necessarily being bound by the kind of old taxonomy. We'll see.
Go ahead, please.
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah.
My question is for Jane, although any of you can answer it.
Can you guys hear me?
When you were talking about that moment of sort of putting the magazine on the coffee table, moving it around, and I think even for us students, if we had maybe minimal publications, we sort of relished that moment where we were holding it and it's like, oh, it's my baby. Do you feel that that's more about the experience of us as editors relishing something that we've slaved over, or is that something that a reader embraces too?
I think that there's nothing like still, like, I can't curl up in bed with my tablet, the same way. Like, there's still really something about that, the physical, like, magazine in that way. Yeah, so I think it definitely goes both ways. For me now, like, thinking about whether to go back into print or do print versions of what I'm doing now, I think the way I feel like I have to think about it in order to make the cost of it make sense, because it's just so much more expensive to reach one person that way than through digital, is to think like, okay, why would this be in print? Is it in print because it's a summer issue and people are going to be by the water and they're not going to want their electronics there? Or is it because of the art direction that we can do on these beautiful images that we couldn't showcase in the same way online? That kind of thing.
I think just because of the interest of time, we're going to probably come up with a system. We'll ask for one more question. Then anybody else who has not had it, if you want to email me the questions, I will do my best to email them to the panelists, and perhaps they will be kind enough to respond.
Or you can tweet at us.
If you can, but it's just, I know we have a party waiting and some of our people have places to go. So let's take one more question, I guess, on this side. Jael?
My question is for Joanne. You mentioned way back when removing the classified ads from Cosmo. I want to know how that affected your readers and how it affected your business and how you managed to bounce back from that.
Well, we only had probably 3 or 4 pages, and it doesn't appear to have made any discernible difference.
I want to thank David for his wonderful job of moderating Broken Arm and All, for our extraordinary panelists and a great panel.